The phone rang at 6:32 a.m. Not an emergency time, but not exactly casual either. I already knew who it was before I picked up. Rebecca never called just to say good morning. "Dad, I'm so sorry to call so early," she began, already out of breath. I could hear car doors slamming in the background, the distant rustle of children's voices and a honking horn. "Ethan has a last-minute meeting, and the sitter bailed. Can you take the kids today? Just until 6? Her voice tightened on the last word, a question masquerading as a command. I rubbed my eyes and looked at the half-eaten toast cooling on my plate. Of course I could. I always did. 15 minutes later, the front door flew open without a knock. "Okay, shoes off. Be nice to Grandpa." Rebecca's voice rang through the house like a whip crack. Mia ran straight into my arms, still wearing her unicorn pajamas under a hoodie. Ben followed, lugging his dinosaur backpack like it weighed more than he did. "Thanks, Dad," Rebecca said, pecking the air beside my cheek. "You're a lifesaver." Then she was gone, tires crunching down my gravel driveway. I stood in the entryway, holding Mia in one arm and Ben's hand in the other. The same entryway Rebecca used to toddle through, back when we still had a coat hook too low for adult jackets and a basket full of crayons by the door. The kids made themselves at home immediately, Mia flipping through cartoons, Ben spreading his Lego army across the rug. I made pancakes because that's what we always did on unplanned mornings. Extra syrup. No questions. By noon, I was sweeping up Cheerios and drying finger paint off the table. I looked around the room and saw evidence of my life. Mismatched toys in an old wooden chest, art projects taped to the fridge with fading magnets, tiny shoes lined up beside my boots. Rebecca didn't ask if I had plans, didn't ask if I was tired, didn't wonder how it felt to become a fixture, but never a guest. Just the babysitter, the backup plan, the soft place to land when everything else fell through. I never minded, not really, but something was shifting, something I couldn't name yet, and I wasn't sure anyone was going to notice when it broke. I found the photo album by accident, wedged between an old toolbox and a pile of winter blankets I hadn't used since Maria passed. Dust danced in the light as I opened the cover, leather bound, cracked at the spine, pages stiff with time. There she was. Rebecca at 6, in a red coat too big for her, standing next to our first Christmas tree after the accident. I'd used bungee cords to hold the top half upright, because I couldn't figure out how to cut it evenly. She'd called it the Leaning Tower of Pine. We both laughed until we cried that night. I turned the pages slowly, each one a punch to the chest. Rebecca's 8th birthday, when I baked the cake myself and spelled congratulations wrong in frosting. Her prom photo, stiff smile and too much makeup, standing with a boy who disappeared 2 weeks later. I remember staying up until she came home that night, pretending to read the paper while my stomach twisted with worry. Every image told a story of years held together by grit, duct tape, and love. I worked construction by day and raised her by night. No child support, no backup plan. Just me and Maria's photo watching from the mantel. After she went to college, the house went silent. I kept it clean, as if Maria might walk through the door and notice the dust. I painted Rebecca's room yellow when she moved out, thinking someday it'd be a nursery. Someday came, and it brought Mia and Benmi's second chance to matter to someone. I stepped in without question. Diapers, bottles, sleepless nights. I was there before the nurse even explained how to swaddle. But lately, the photos were all one-sided. I hadn't been in a birthday picture in 2 years. No fridge drawings with Grandpa scrawled in crayon. Rebecca posted pictures, online holidays, school plays, weekend trips, but I was never tagged. As if I'd become a ghost in their lives. Useful, but invisible. I closed the album gently, brushing the cover like it was skin. Outside, the wind rattled the last of autumn's leaves against the window. It was almost winter again. Time for warm meals, family dinners, lights on the porch. But this year, I wasn't sure if I was invited or just expected to help hang the decorations. Rebecca used to scream at me. Not the way people raise their voice in an argument, but the kind of screaming that comes from somewhere deep, like a wound that won't stop reopening. I remember the slammed doors, the late-night calls from the principal, the time I found a bottle of vodka hidden behind her books when she was 16. "I'm not my mother," she'd yell, as if Maria's death had written a script for her life she refused to follow. She once ran away for 3 days. I called every hospital in the county. When she came back, her mascara was smudged and she smelled like smoke, but she looked scared. Not sorry, but scared. I didn't yell. I made her a grilled cheese sandwich and sat beside her on the couch. We didn't talk that night. Sometimes silence is the only thing strong enough to hold a family together. But there were other moments too. I remember her curled up next to me on the old plaid couch, crying over her first heartbreak, clutching my hand like it was the only solid thing in her world. I remember the nights I stayed up editing her college essays, making sure her grammar was perfect even if I'd never finished high school myself. She used to tell people I was her hero. Now, she's all straight lines and perfectly planned routines. She wears heels in her kitchen, talks about time in terms of logistics, and keeps a whiteboard calendar color, coded with 3 different shades for her kids' activities. She's the kind of mother the other moms admire. Present, prepared, perpetually polished. But every now and then, when Mia spills juice on the floor or Ben throws a tantrum in the cereal aisle, I see a flash of the girl she used to be, the one who couldn't control her world and hated me for trying. She's grown into someone respectable, responsible, successful. And yet, somehow, I feel further from her now than I ever did when she was screaming at me in the hallway. Back then, at least she still saw me as something to fight against. These days, I'm not even sure she sees me at all. I wake up before the sun, just like I used to when I was on the job. Only now, there's no site manager, no punch clock, no coffee thermos in the truck. Just a quiet kitchen, an aging calendar, and a mental checklist that resets each day with surgical precision. The kids arrive by 7:15 sharp. Mia skips through the door, already asking for oatmeal, while Ben clutches his stuffed dinosaur like it's a survival tool. I've got it all down to muscle memory: no toast cut diagonally. Pink cup for Mia, the blue one for Ben. No crusts, extra jelly. Their mom sends reminders, but she doesn't need to. I remember more about their habits than I do about my own. Drop-off lines are chaos in pressed slacks. Minivans inch forward while parents shout last-minute instructions from rolled-down windows. I watch Mia walk into the building with her lunchbox swinging like a pendulum. Ben goes to preschool down the street. His teacher waves at me like we've been lifelong friends. I guess we kind of have. After that, the house goes quiet again. I clean, I sort, I fold little socks into pairs too small to believe. Around 2:00, the whirlwind starts again: pickup, snacks, homework help. Mia has ballet on Wednesdays, and I sit in the car reading old westerns while she pirouettes her way into the life Rebecca used to dream about. Dinner's on me if Rebecca works late, which is most nights. I make what I can, avoid anything with more than 5 ingredients. The kids don't mind. Mia says my spaghetti tastes better than her mom's. I never correct her. Bedtime is a delicate ballet of its own stories. Stuffed animals, light dimmed but not off. Sometimes, they fall asleep holding my hand. Other times, they ask why mommy doesn't do bedtime anymore. I lie. Gently. Because some lies are just a way of telling the truth a little softer. By the time Rebecca pulls up, it's late. She mouths, "Thank you," at me through the window, her eyes never quite meeting mine. I walk back to my empty house, heat up leftovers, and sit with the hum of the fridge as my evening companion. No paycheck, no framed photo on the mantle, no mention of Grandpa when the ballet recital programs are printed. But still, I show up, every single day, because that's what fathers do. Even when they're no longer called one. It started with a joke. At least I think it was a joke. Must be nice to have all this free time, Rebecca said one morning while scrolling through her emails. She was in a rush, as always, sipping coffee I'd made and handing me Ben's backpack like it belonged to me. Retirement looks good on you, Dad. I mean, I'm lucky you've got nothing better to do. I smiled. But something in her voice caught me sideways. Nothing better to do. I'd spent 40 years pouring concrete and raising her without a partner, patching drywall and broken hearts in equal measure. Now, apparently, I was just a man with time to kill. She said it again later that week, at Mia's school pickup. You wouldn't believe the traffic I had to fight just to get here. Good thing you don't have a real schedule. She laughed, slid into the driver's seat, and turned up the radio. I watched her drive off with the same little girl I'd just helped craft a science project with: foil volcano, baking soda explosion, the works. But to her, I was just background support. Flexible. Convenient. I started noticing the pattern. She talked about her coworkers' real stress, how exhausting it was to be a working mom. I don't deny either job's demanding, and parenting is no picnic. But the way she said it, like what I did all day didn't count because it didn't come with a paycheck or performance reviews, started to chafe. You're lucky, she said again one night, when I offered to keep the kids over the weekend. Not everyone gets to just relax. I wanted to ask her what part of pureed carrots on the couch, midnight diaper emergencies, and school shoe shopping counted as relaxing. But I didn't. Because that's what parents do. They swallow the hurt, nod politely, and show up again the next day. Still, her words lingered. Free time. No real job. Lucky. I began to wonder what she thought I was doing every day if not helping raise the very children she brought into the world. Then I realized maybe she didn't think of me raising them at all. Maybe, in her mind, I was just filling time, killing hours, waiting for something better to do. Maybe that's why she didn't ask if I was happy. Maybe she assumed I didn't need to be. Dinner was spaghetti. Not the homemade kind I usually make, but the kind Rebecca reheats from a plastic container labeled organic marinara. The kids were already seated. Ben swinging his legs under the table, Mia telling me about a girl in her class who could do a backbend. Rebecca walked in late, dropped her purse on the counter, and barely looked up. Dad, can you make sure they both get showers tonight? I've got that client call at 8. Of course, I said. It was always, of course. Dinner went as it usually did, me cutting up Ben's noodles so he wouldn't choke, Rebecca checking her phone between bites, Mia asking if I could come to her dance recital next week. Wouldn't miss it, I said. Rebecca didn't comment. And then it happened. A moment so small you might have missed it, if you weren't already paying attention. I reminded Mia to clear her plate, and Rebecca sighed. Dad, you don't have to act like their parent. That's not your job. Silence. Even Ben stopped slurping his juice. I turned to look at her. She didn't flinch, just kept twirling noodles on her fork, like she hadn't just gutted me with a single sentence. You're just the babysitter, she added offhand. Like it wasn't a declaration of war. It's okay to relax sometimes. Just the babysitter. The words echoed in my ears, like gunfire in a quiet canyon. I felt my throat tighten, my jaw clench. For a second, I couldn't even swallow. I looked at Mia, who was now staring down at her empty plate, like she was in trouble. Ben reached for my hand under the table, like he knew something wasn't right but couldn't put words to it. I see, I said softly. I stood up, collected the plates, and walked them to the sink. My hands moved automatically: rinse, scrub, dry, but inside, I was unraveling. After everything, the diapers, the flu nights, the scraped knees and carpool lines, I was just the help. Just someone to warm up leftovers and keep the kids alive until she got back. Not family, not a father, not a grandparent. Just the babysitter. I didn't say another word that night. I kissed the kids goodnight, nodded to Rebecca, and let myself out the front door. The cool air hit me like a slap. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt something break that might not heal. The list was never written down, but I knew it by heart. Pick up Mia from ballet on Thursdays. Make sure Ben eats something with protein at lunch. Drop off the dry cleaning. Restock snacks organic only. Fold the laundry, but don't use too much fabric softener. Be at the house early enough so they're not late, but not so early that it's awkward. I didn't get a schedule. I got assumptions. What used to feel like help started to feel like obligation. Rebecca stopped asking and just started leaving notes. Or not even that, just a text saying, "Can you grab them?" Or, "You're okay, staying an extra hour, right?" She never waited for an answer. It was rhetorical. She assumed I had nothing better to do, and I'd already proven her right too many times. I'd find myself fixing the broken latch on the back gate while waiting for the kids to finish playing, patching up loose hinges on the bathroom cabinet, cleaning the grout in the kitchen tiles because no one else had noticed how bad it had gotten. I wasn't just babysitting. I was maintaining the infrastructure of a house that didn't belong to me. Once, Rebecca called while I was on my way home. "Hey, can you swing by Costco? We're out of wipes, and I don't have time this week." No offer to pay. No please. Just expectation. I bought the wipes. Of course I did. There was no thank you. No. "You've done so much for us, Dad." Not even a passing mention of how hard it must be to parent all over again at my age. Just more to-dos. More invisible labor, performed by someone who was supposed to be enjoying retirement. I looked around my own house one night and realized I hadn't vacuumed in over a week. My laundry sat unfolded on the couch. The fridge was nearly empty. I'd been so busy managing their household, I'd stopped managing my own. The irony twisted in my gut. I'd traded my peace for usefulness. And somehow, even that wasn't enough to earn recognition. I was there, always there, and still completely unseen. Mia's birthday party was princess-themed. Pink balloons, glittery tablecloths, cupcakes with edible tiaras. Rebecca had hired a face painter and a magician. The whole backyard had been transformed into a fairy tale. I got there early to help set up. Hung streamers, arranged folding chairs, even taped down extension cords so no one would trip. Rebecca was too busy directing the caterer to say more than a distracted, "Thanks, Dad." Ethan was at the grill, wearing designer sunglasses and sipping a craft beer. He nodded at me like I was the guy from the landscaping crew. Kids poured into the yard in a rush of laughter and frosting. Mia ran around in her sparkly dress, beaming. I caught her eye a few times, and she waved just a flick of her fingers, but then got pulled away by some classmate with glitter in her hair. Rebecca flitted from group to group, smiling wide for the other parents. "Oh, we're just so lucky Grandpa helps out so much," she said to a woman in yoga pants and pearls. Lucky, the word again. As if this was chance, not choice. As if I hadn't built the very foundation her life stood on. I stood by the snack table for most of the party, offering juice boxes and restacking napkins. No one asked me to, but no one else was doing it either. When the magician asked for a volunteer, "Who brought you into this world?" Ethan stepped forward to cheers. Rebecca laughed and said, "My husband's the real magician." Everyone clapped. I swallowed hard. No one mentioned the dollhouse I'd built Mia by hand. No one noticed that the helium balloons had come from my credit card. I gave Mia her gift, a hand-carved jewelry box with her initials. She hugged me and said thank you. Distracted, already looking past me, toward the face painting line. By the time the sun started to set, the yard was a mess of plastic forks and smeared frosting. Ethan passed me a trash bag without a word. I stayed late and cleaned. When I got home, my hands smelled like birthday cake and bleach. I sat in the dark, the silence swallowing me whole. My granddaughter turned 8 today, and somehow I left feeling smaller than ever. Tuesday started like every other. I packed 2 lunchassoni with no crusts, the other with extra grapes warmed up the car, and double-checked that Mia's dance bag was in the trunk. I even brought the foam sword Ben liked for his playground dragon battles. I was early. I'm always early. But when I got to Mia's school, The parking lot was oddly quiet. No line of cars. No clatter of kids pouring out of minivans. Just an empty sidewalk and a locked door. I checked my phone. No messages. I called the office. "Mia Dawson?" the receptionist said, her voice bright. "Oh, she's not enrolled here anymore." I blinked. "What do you mean she's not enrolled?" "She transferred last week. To Glenwood Charter." Glenwood, 20 minutes across town. I stood in the lobby, still holding the lunchbox. Ben's preschool was no different. When I arrived, the sign-in sheet didn't have his name. "He's with a new aftercare program," the teacher said. "Rebecca said she'd let you know." But she hadn't. I drove home in silence. Both lunchboxes still in the passenger seat. The sandwiches were warm. The grapes had started to sweat inside their bags. I set them on the counter and stared at them for a long time, like they might explain what just happened. No warning. No heads up. Just erased. That night, I called Rebecca 3 times. No answer. I texted her, "We need to talk." Nothing. It wasn't until the next morning, after I sent a final message, "Are the kids okay?" that she replied, "They're fine. We made some changes. Can we talk tonight?" I stared at the blinking cursor, the short message, the cold efficiency of it. Like I was a delivery guy who missed the memo about a new address. I hadn't lost track of the kids. They had been moved intentionally without telling me. And for the first time, I wondered if this was the beginning of something permanent. Rebecca met me on the front porch. She didn't ask me in. "Let's sit outside," she said, as if the air might cushion the blow she was about to deliver. The sun had just dipped behind the neighbor's roof. Everything looked gold and harmless, but my stomach was a stone. She crossed her legs, smoothing her slacks. "Dad, I know this feels abrupt, and I should have told you sooner." I waited. She looked away. "We hired a nanny, full-time, certified. She comes highly recommended." The words were smooth, rehearsed, professional, like she was negotiating a severance. "A nanny," I repeated. My voice felt far away. "Since when?" "Last week. Ethan and I talked it over. And with your age and, well, everything going on, we thought it was best." I stared at her. "What exactly is going on?" Rebecca shifted in her seat. "Dad, you're getting older. You forget things sometimes. The kids are on tight schedules now. We need someone reliable." The last word hit harder than she meant it to. Or maybe she meant it exactly that way. "You could have told me. I didn't want to hurt your feelings." "Too late." She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "This way. You can rest. Focus on yourself. You've done enough." Enough. The words slammed into my chest like a closed door. Not thank you. Not love you. Just a dismissal. "I'm not broken, Rebecca. I didn't fall apart. You didn't even ask if I wanted a change." She didn't respond. Just looked past me toward the street, as if this was a necessary task, not a conversation, a chore to complete, a box to check. "You're not needed anymore," she said finally, softer this time. Like it might sting less if it was whispered. I stood up slowly, nodding. "I see." I walked to my truck with hands that felt too still. The keys trembled slightly in the ignition. The same truck I used to pick up Mia from kindergarten. The same one Ben fell asleep in after preschool. Juice box still clutched in his hand. Now I'd just be another man driving home alone, wondering when exactly he stopped being family and started being background noise. And for the first time, I didn't know what to do with tomorrow. I ran into Helen at the grocery store. We used to volunteer together at the local library, back before I started watching the kids full-time. She gave me that familiar smile, the one people use when they're about to tell you something you might not want to hear. "You doing okay, Frank?" she asked. Her cart was half filled with soup cans and cat litter. It felt like a safe question. I nodded, told her the usual. Keeping busy, trying to stay out of trouble. She hesitated. "I heard from Marcia, you know. Her son is in Mia's new class at Glenwood." I nodded. Well, apparently Rebecca mentioned that things at home were tense, that she felt smothered. I blinked. Smothered? She said you were around too much, that it was confusing for the kids, undermining her parenting somehow. Oh, I stood there, next to a stack of watermelons, unable to move. Helen backpedaled. I'm sure she didn't mean it the way it sounds, but it struck me as odd. You've done so much. I forced a polite smile, told her to take care, and walked out without buying a thing. Around too much, undermining her parenting. I thought about all the times Mia clung to me when she was scared, how Ben cried for Grandpa when he scraped his knee instead of calling for his mom. I didn't mean to take her place. I was just there when she wasn't. But maybe that was the problem. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone like it might ring and undo all of it. It didn't. The silence confirmed what I already suspected. This hadn't been about convenience. It had been a calculated shift. Not to free me. To remove me. I wasn't replaced because I was tired. I was replaced because I was inconvenient. Too close. Too loved. Too present. And apparently, too much. 2 days later, I decided to stop by. No warning. No text. Just like the old days when I could knock and let myself in, welcomed by squeals and hugs and the smell of spilled juice. But when I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. The front blinds were closed. The porch light, which used to flicker from a loose bulb I never got around to fixing, had been replaced with a sleek, motion sensor LED. I walked up the steps and knocked twice. No answer. I rang the doorbell. I could hear voices inside Mia laughing, Ethan saying something low and firm, but still, no one came. I waited another minute before knocking again. Finally, the door opened a crack. Ethan. He didn't smile. Hey, Frank, he said, holding the door with one hand, like he wasn't sure whether to invite me in or hold me out. I was just in the area, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Thought I'd drop by. Say hi to the kids. Ethan glanced over his shoulder. I could hear the TV playing, something animated and loud. Now's not really a good time. Oh, I said. Could I just say hello real quick? He stepped out, gently closing the door behind him. Rebecca's got a thing, and we're trying to keep the kids on their new schedule. Less disruption, you know. Disruption. I understand, I said slowly. I just miss them. Ethan shifted awkwardly, checking his watch. Maybe just shoot a text next time? Give us a heads up? I nodded, stepping back. Right. Of course. He offered a tight, practiced smile and retreated inside. The door closed. No goodbye from the kids. No wave from the window. Just the soft, mechanical click of the deadbolt sliding into place. I stood there on the porch for a moment, hands in my pockets, listening to the muffled sounds of my family behind a wall I couldn't walk through anymore. I used to have a key to this house. Now I needed permission to knock. The wind picked up as I turned to leave, rustling the leaves I used to rake with Ben every fall. For the first time, I felt like a stranger on a doorstep where I used to belong. I found out about Mia's school play on Facebook. Not through a call, not a text, not even a forwarded email from the school like I used to get. Just a post, buried between holiday recipes and political arguments. A photo of her in a paper crown, beaming in front of a painted cardboard castle. Rebecca captioned it, "So proud of our little star. She lit up the stage tonight." 57 likes, 12 comments. I wasn't one of them. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the photo. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred Mia mid-laugh, arms stretched wide. That same missing front tooth she used to show off like a trophy. She was happy. I should have been happy too. Instead, I felt like a ghost. No invite, no mention, not even an after-the-fact message saying how it went. I scrolled through the rest of Rebecca's profile. There were pictures of pumpkin patches, soccer games, birthday parties. I wasn't in any of them, not one. Used to be, I was always behind the camera. Now it felt like I'd been erased from the album. I clicked over to Ethan's profile. Same story. Photos of family weekends. A new post about cherishing the little things, all taken in the same backyard I used to mow, sitting around the patio furniture I helped build. You'd think I'd never lived a day inside that house. It wasn't just an oversight. It was a quiet, deliberate exclusion, like a painting being retouched, layer by layer, until one figure just disappears. That night, I closed my laptop and sat in the dark. The only sound, the hum of the fridge, and the slow, steady ache of being left behind. Thanksgiving just didn't come together this year, Rebecca said over the phone, her voice clipped but casual. Ethan's parents are coming, and we're keeping it small, just easier that way. Small, easier. Words that were beginning to carry weight, like anchors. I told her not to worry. Said I understood. She promised we'd do something soon. She didn't say when. December came fast. The first snow fell on a Wednesday. I put the old wreath on the door, more out of habit than spirit. I waited for the call. It didn't come. I texted her. Would love to see the kids before Christmas. The reply came a day later. Things are tight this year. Not sure what our plans are yet. Not sure. Not this time. Not this year. I stared at the tree in my living room bare, unlit, still in the box. I used to decorate it with Mia and Ben, each ornament a memory. Mia liked the ones that sparkled. Ben always put the star on top, even when he was too small to reach without standing on my shoulders. I thought about the year I dressed as Santa, even wore the itchy beard. Mia didn't stop talking about it for a month. This year, I wasn't invited. I bought gifts anyway. Books, wooden puzzles, nothing flashy, just things I knew they'd like. I wrapped them carefully, labeled them in my neat handwriting. I waited for an address, a porch drop-off, an anything. Christmas came. Snow fell in soft silence across the street. Somewhere, my grandchildren were opening presents, laughing, playing. I wondered if any of them came from me. I heated up soup and ate it at the kitchen table. My only company, the ticking wall clock, and the sound of wind scratching at the windows. It was the quietest Christmas I'd ever had, and the loudest ache I'd ever known. Frank, how are those grandkids of yours? Marvin asked me from across the table at Lou's diner, wiping ketchup from his fingers with a napkin that already looked overwhelmed. He meant well. They always mean well. Oh, they're great, I said, smiling like it didn't hurt. Busy with school. You know how it is. Mia's doing ballet. Ben's building rocket ships out of Legos. Marvin grinned. You must be proud. I tell you, nothing like grandkids, huh? I nodded, took a sip of lukewarm coffee to hide the tremor in my jaw. They're the light of my life, I said, even as the words tasted like ash. The others chimed in stories about winter concerts and sleepovers, pictures passed around of toddlers in elf costumes and teenagers in honor cords. I laughed where I was supposed to, made a joke about how kids grow too fast. No one noticed how tight my smile felt. No one saw the way I blinked too long between sentences. After breakfast, I drove home slower than usual, letting the silence in the cab of my truck settle around me like fog. I parked, left the engine running for a moment, then shut it off, and sat in the stillness. Inside the house, I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and leaned on the counter with both hands. The lights were off. The only sound was the furnace kicking on, old, wheezing, faithful. I made it to the bathroom before the tears came. Not loud, not theatrical, just hot, slow drops that fell into the sink like leaky pipes. I didn't make a sound. I didn't need to. Grief is quiet when it's had time to settle in. Later, I microwaved a cup of soup I didn't want, turned on the TV I wouldn't watch. I thought about texting Rebecca, just to say hello. But I didn't. I already knew the silence that would follow. Somewhere out there, my grandchildren were laughing, growing, living. And I was just a man telling stories that used to be true. The garage was colder than usual, a sharp kind of cold that gets into your knees before you even kneel. I was digging for the extension cord when I found the box. Old, water-stained, edges frayed. Labeled in my handwriting, M.I.A. Ben. First years. I sat on the concrete floor without even thinking. Inside were paper crowns and macaroni art. Faded construction paper cards with, "I love you, Grandpa," scrawled in shaky letters. A photo of Mia sitting in my lap wearing sunglasses 3 times too big. Ben asleep on my chest, his little fist curled around my thumb. I'd forgotten how small they were, how much space they once took up in a room, in my life. There was a Father's Day card Mia made in kindergarten drawn in crayons, a big stick figure holding hands with a smaller one. "You are my hero," it said. She'd spelled hero, H-E-R-O-W. I never corrected her. I picked up a tiny sock, no bigger than my palm, and something in my chest cracked open. I sat there for what felt like an hour, surrounded by memories that no longer had a place. My breath came out in visible clouds. I didn't move. I didn't want to. Moving felt like permission to forget. The garage smelled like old tools, motor oil, and winter dust. Familiar, grounded smells. I used to rock Ben to sleep and hum songs I hadn't sung in years. I used to build pillow forts for Mia and tell her they were castles. Now they were stories in a box. Packed away. Outgrown. My fingers found a photo of the 3 of us at the Zumia on my shoulders, Ben in the carrier. I looked tired, older than I remembered, but I was smiling. A real smile. I hugged the photo to my chest and closed my eyes. The cold floor beneath me, the quiet around me, the ache inside me, they all blended into one thing. Absence. But the kind that doesn't echo. The kind that lingers. Like breath on a window, fading just as you try to trace it. I found the card in the back of my desk drawer, tucked behind some old tax papers and a cracked roll of Scotch tape. Nathan C. Bell, elder, family law embossed lettering on thick cardstock, the kind that tries to make you feel like the law is still personal. He helped me draft my will 2 years after Maria passed. Patient, thorough, asked about my daughter and grandkids with the kind of practiced warmth that lawyers are trained to use. I liked him anyway. I held the card in my palm for a long time. I wasn't angry. Not in the fire and fury way. Not anymore. The ache had gone too deep for that. I was something quieter. Something colder. Curious, maybe. I didn't want to sue Rebecca. I didn't want to take her to court or fight over holidays like divorced parents do. I just wanted to know if what I felt in my bones, this slow, deliberate erasure, had any name besides heartbreak. So I called. Nathan Bell's office. The receptionist chirped. "How can I help you?" "This is Frank Dawson. He helped me with my will a few years back. I'd like to schedule a consultation." "Of course, Mr. Dawson. What's the nature of the appointment?" I hesitated. "Family matters," I said. "Grandchildren? Visitation questions." She booked me for Friday afternoon. 30 minutes. First one's free. Isn't it always? That night, I sat in my chair by the window, watching the wind blow leaves across the lawn I used to rake with Ben. I didn't know what I expected from the appointment, maybe nothing. Maybe just the feeling of doing something. Of saying aloud, to someone who had to listen, that I wasn't just imagining all of this. I wasn't trying to take the kids away. I just wanted to stop being invisible. I pulled out the journal Maria gave me the Christmas before she got sick. Leather-bound, soft cover. The pages yellowed just slightly at the edges. I hadn't written in it since Rebecca gave birth to Mia. First grandchild. First time I cried from joy in almost a decade. But tonight, the house was too quiet, and the ache in my chest too loud. December 17th. I found out today that Rebecca thought I was undermining her parenting, that I was around too much. Funny. There was a time she begged me not to leave her alone. I flipped to the back pages and found something folded there, a photocopy of a middle school essay. My Hero, by Rebecca Dawson, age 13. It was part of a Father's Day surprise at school. She'd handed it to me with a blush on her cheeks and said, "Don't read it in front of me." So I waited. Then I cried. She wrote about how I packed her lunches even when I worked night shifts, how I showed up at every recital, even if I had to come in work boots, how I taught her how to change a tire, how to apologize, how to keep a promise. "My dad is my hero," she'd written. "He doesn't wear a cape, but he saved me anyway." I ran my thumb over the words like they might smudge. I didn't recognize the woman she had become, but maybe that was the hardest part. She had once seen the best in me. Unfiltered, unasked, uncoached. What had changed? Was it time? Was it pride? Had I been too soft? Too available? Too constant? Had she mistaken that constancy for something owed? I set the page down and stared out the window at the dark. She had once believed I was everything. Now she couldn't even return my calls. I closed the journal slowly, the weight of those words pressing into my chest like an old bruise that had never healed properly. "I raised her better than this," I said aloud, to no one. The silence didn't disagree. Clara wore a scarf with bright oranges and blues that didn't match anything else she had on. And she didn't care. She was like that. Lived on her own terms. We met every now and then at a little cafe across from the park, usually when the silence in our houses got too heavy. She stirred her tea without looking up. "So? Still no word?" I shook my head. "Kids are fine. Just busy. That's what Rebecca says. Always busy." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Busy's the modern word for, I don't want to deal with this." I chuckled, but there was no joy in it. "It's not like she hates me. She just doesn't see me anymore." Clara leaned in. "Frank, I love you like a brother. So I'm going to say this plain. You've let them make you invisible. You've allowed it." I blinked. "It's not that simple." "It is. You showed up every day for them for years. You gave up your time, your energy, your peace. And now, they've replaced you with convenience and told you it's love. That's not okay. That's erasure. And you're letting it happen." Her words were sharp but warm, like a needle sewing a wound shut. "You need to stop trying to be useful and start trying to be whole," she added, sipping her tea. We sat in silence after that, the kind of silence that says more than talk ever could. She reached across the table, covered my hand with hers. "You were a damn good father, Frank, and a better grandfather than most kids ever get. Don't let them forget that, especially not you." I didn't say anything, but I didn't argue either. The motorcycle was buried under a tarp in the shed, dusty, dented, ignored, much like me. Maria used to call it, "that damn thing," but she smiled every time I pulled into the driveway, helmet under my arm, covered in road dust. I spent a week restoring it. New plugs, changed the oil, replaced the headlight. Took my time. My hands ached, but they remembered. There's something holy about fixing something that once made you feel free. On Tuesday, I joined a book club at the library. Sat in a circle with 3 retired teachers and a guy named Mel who only came for the donuts. We read Steinbeck. I forgot how much I liked the quiet of printed words. Friday, I walked the wooded trail behind the church. The leaves were brittle and bright, crunching under each step like they were announcing me. I breathed in deep. No kids in tow, no pickup schedule. Just air. It wasn't peace exactly. Not yet. But it was movement. Each day, I gave a little less of myself to memories that didn't give back. And for the first time in months, I started to feel like someone who existed outside of someone else's plans. Dear Rebecca, I don't know how to start this without sounding like a man trying not to beg. So, maybe I'll just say the truth. I miss them. I miss you. You were my world once. Before the grandkids. Before everything. You were my reason for pushing through 16-hour days and coming home to a sink full of dishes and a silent house. I did it without question, not because I had to, because I wanted to, because I loved you more than breath. I see you now, running your life like clockwork, managing everything with the precision of someone who can't afford a crack in the schedule. I admire it. I know you're doing your best. But somewhere along the way, you turned me into something temporary. Like I was holding a place for someone better. You said I was just the babysitter. You told me to rest as if disappearing would be restful. Rebecca, I was never trying to take your place. I was trying to be there when you couldn't. That's what parents do. That's what grandparents do. Not for credit, just for love. But I am human. I hurt. And I can't keep pretending it doesn't matter that I've been shut out of their lives. I raised you better than this. At least I thought I did. You don't have to answer this. I probably won't send it anyway. But if you ever wonder why I've gotten quiet, this is why. Love always. Dad. I folded the letter slowly, carefully, placed it in an envelope, wrote her name on the front in pen. Then I tucked it into the back of my journal. Some truths are too heavy to deliver, but they still need to be written. It was a Tuesday when the knock came. 3 short raps, firm, official. Not the kind neighbors make. I opened the door and found a woman in a navy coat holding a clipboard and wearing the expression of someone trained not to flinch. "Mr. Dawson?" she asked. "Yes? My name is Julie Hartford. I'm with Child Protective Services." My blood ran cold. "Is everything all right? The kids, Mia? Benere? They okay?" She offered a tight smile. "They're safe. This isn't an emergency. We're just conducting a preliminary inquiry. A complaint was filed regarding the Dawson household, your daughters." My hand tightened around the edge of the door. "A complaint?" I can't disclose the source, but the nature of the concerns involved emotional distress, possible neglect mostly related to the children's adjustment after recent changes in their routine and caretaking. I stepped aside and motioned for her to come in. She didn't stay long, just asked questions. What I'd observed, how often I saw the kids, if I'd ever witnessed anything concerning at the house. I told her the truth, that I hadn't been allowed near them in weeks, that I wasn't even given a goodbye. Julie made notes without judgment, but I could tell she was piecing something together. "We're just gathering context," she said. "This could be nothing, but sometimes the people closest to the situation see things no one else wants to admit." She left a card, told me to call if anything came to mind. I closed the door slowly, feeling the weight of her visit settle into the room like dust. I had once been their constant, their anchor. Now I was a stranger answering questions about a life I used to live in. I didn't want trouble for Rebecca. I didn't want a case file, or court dates, or accusations. But I couldn't deny the cold truth forming around me. I wasn't the only one who had noticed something was wrong. It came in the middle of the night. The iPad lit up beside my chair, where I dozed off, watching an old Western. FaceTime. Mia's name. I answered before logic could catch up. "Mia?" Her face filled the screen, grainy, dim, lit only by the soft blue glow of her room. Her eyes were wide, scared but determined. "Hi, Grandpa," she whispered. "Mia, sweetheart. Is everything okay?" She nodded fast. "I'm not supposed to call you," Mom said. "We're not allowed." My throat tightened. "Why not?" "I don't know." She said, "It's just better right now. But I miss you. Ben misses you too. We talk about you in secret." She showed me a corner of her room beneath her bed, a shoebox filled with drawings I'd helped her make. One of them had, "I miss Grandpa," scribbled in red marker. "We saw a lady today. She asked questions. Mom was mad after. She yelled at Ethan." I tried to keep my voice calm. "Did she hurt you? Did anyone?" "No." She cut in quickly. "It's just different now. Everyone's tired all the time. The nanny quit. Mom's always working. Ethan yells more. Ben cries when he thinks no one's looking. I closed my eyes for a second. I wish I could come see you. I wish that too, she whispered. I don't get why we can't. Me neither, kiddo. She looked down. I gotta go. If they see I use the iPad. Wait, I said. Can you call again? Even just for a minute? She gave a tiny nod. I'll try. Okay. I love you, Mia. I love you too, Grandpa. The screen went black. I sat in the stillness of the room, the blue light still lingering on the walls, like she was still there. The ache in my chest had shape now. It had a voice, and it was calling back. It was Helen, again, same grocery store. Same aisle near the bread that always goes stale too fast. She leaned in, voice low. You didn't hear it from me, Frank, but things aren't good at Rebecca's house. I didn't even pretend to be surprised. What now? The nanny quit. Marcy says she just walked out, said the house was a mess, the kids were stressed, and Ethan was impossible. I raised my eyebrows. Helen glanced over her shoulder like someone might be listening. He's been gambling, online stuff, sports betting, lost a lot, from what I hear, and drinking more than usual. The pieces started falling into place why Rebecca had gone quiet, why the kids looked tired in every photo, why the call from CPS hadn't been just smoke. Later that day, I did something I hadn't done in a while. I logged into my old bank statements, the account I used to use for groceries, kids' clothes, emergency pizza nights. I noticed 3 separate transfers over the last year, small ones, but consistent, all marked Rebecca household. I had no problem helping. That wasn't the issue. But she hadn't told me. Not once. Not a word. I had been slowly funding a house that didn't want me in it. I sat on the porch with a mug of coffee growing cold in my hand, the wind slipping beneath my sleeves. A house is like a wall, you can hold it up, patch every crack. But if the foundation's broken, it still falls. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to shout. I just wanted to be seen again. Not as a backup plan. Not as a threat. As a father. I showed up just before dusk. Rebecca answered the door with tired eyes and a mouth already mid-sigh. Dad, now's not. I'm not here to fight, I said calmly. She stood there a moment, uncertain, then opened the door wider. The house smelled like reheated food, and something burning, stress, probably. Toys scattered. Laundry piles like forgotten promises. Ben was asleep on the couch. Mia glanced at me from the hallway, eyes wide. We sat in the kitchen. Ethan wasn't home. I know about the nanny, I began. And Ethan. Her face cracked, but she held firm. You have no idea what it's like, Dad? Then tell me. And she did. She talked for nearly 30 minutes without stopping. About work pressure, unpaid bills, Ethan's lies, the shame, the fear of being judged, the weight of being everything to everyone. She said I made it harder being perfect in the kids' eyes, always knowing what to do. She felt like she could never measure up. You were always the hero, she said bitterly. Even when you were tired, even when I hated you, you just kept showing up. I didn't defend myself. I let the silence settle. Then I spoke. You didn't have to compete with me. You could have leaned on me. I was never trying to win. Tears came ventilent, exhausted, sudden. I didn't want you to see me fail. I reached across the table. You didn't. You just forgot I was still in your corner. We sat there for a long while. No tidy ending. No resolution tied up in a bow. But there it was. A start. The waiting room in Nathan Bell's office smelled like lemon cleaner and stress. I sat with my hands folded, the lawyer's card still tucked in my wallet like a talisman. This time, I wasn't just there to ask questions. I had answers. I had resolve. Rebecca had agreed to come. Not alone, her own lawyer sat beside her, face blank, but professional. The two of them walked in stiff as fence posts. I nodded. She didn't nod back. Nathan leaned forward and opened the folder. "We're not here to punish anyone," he said. "We're here to protect continuity for the kids. For Frank." The room was silent except for the scratch of pens and the flipping of papers. There were no yelling matches, no tears. Just calm terms, laid out like bricks, each one paving a path toward a new arrangement. One built with boundaries. Visitation. 2 afternoons a week and every other Sunday. Holidays alternated. No more surprise changes. No more unreturned calls. If anything shifted, it had to be written and agreed upon. And most important of all, Rebecca would no longer treat me like a shadow in my own family. There was an agreement clause that included emotional stability for minors. Nathan looked at her directly. "That includes not blocking meaningful relationships without cause." Rebecca signed it. Her hand trembled slightly. Afterward, we stood in the parking lot, side by side like strangers. "I didn't want it to come to this," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. "Neither did I." She looked up at me, eyes red. "But maybe we needed it. Maybe." The legal paperwork wasn't a victory. It was a boundary. A line drawn not in sand, but in ink. I hadn't won. But I was no longer begging to be in their lives. I was reclaiming my place by right, by love, by law. The bench hadn't changed. Still splintered along the edge, still tilted slightly to the left. I sat there anyway. The playground was full of noise allowing, sneakers pounding, wood chips crunching under every step, familiar sounds, family sounds. Then I saw them. Mia spotted me first. She froze mid-swing, eyes wide, then jumped off, landing with a thud. "Grandpa!" she screamed. I barely had time to open my arms before she crashed into me, nearly knocking the wind out of my chest. Her arms wrapped tight around my neck. "You came!" "I told you I would," I whispered, my voice catching. Ben ran up next, more shy, tugging at my sleeve. I lifted him into my lap. He pressed his head against my chest. No words needed. Rebecca stood at the edge of the playground, watching from a distance. She didn't wave, but she didn't walk away either. I sat there with both of them in my arms. The sun warm on our faces, the world alive again. They didn't ask why I'd been gone. They just made space for me again, without ceremony or explanation, like kids do. And just like that, for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. We met at a neutral office off chairs, abstract paintings, tissue boxes tucked into every corner. The therapist's name was Dana. She wore sweaters with sleeves too long and had the kind of voice that didn't rush anything. Rebecca sat across from me, arms folded. Not angry, just armored. Dana started with simple things: family structure, communication patterns, history. But by the second session, the air in the room was thick. "You abandoned me when I needed you most," Rebecca said. My heart flinched. "When?" "When I had Mia. You didn't ask if I was okay. You just started showing up like you knew what was best." I bit my tongue, felt the years roll back. "I didn't think I needed to ask. You were drowning. I was trying to throw a rope." She looked at her lap. "I didn't want a rope. I wanted someone to ask how I was treading water." Silence. Dana let it sit there like a stone dropped in a still pond. The truth wasn't easy. It wasn't neat, but it was real. Over the weeks, more things came out. My resentment, her exhaustion, my need to be useful, her need to be independent. We spoke without yelling. We cried without shame. "I never meant to replace you," I told her once, voice shaking. "I just didn't know how to stop showing up." She nodded. "And I didn't know how to tell you to stay, without needing you every second." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was healing. Slow, honest, earned. The call came on a Thursday. "Dad, any chance you could take the kids overnight? Ethan's got a work thing, and I need to prep for Monday." I sat at my kitchen table, coffee in hand, the motorcycle keys beside me. I thought about the old day show. I used to say yes before the question finished. But not this time. I'd love to spend time with them, I said gently, but not on demand. I'm not the babysitter, Rebecca. I'm their grandfather. There was a pause. Not offended, not defensive, just silence. Like she was adjusting to a new script. I understand, she said eventually. Would you want to have them Saturday instead? Just to spend time? I smiled. Absolutely. That Saturday, they came over. We made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Ben wore 2 different socks and called it fashion. Mia beat me at chess twice and pretended it wasn't on purpose. There was no pressure, no obligation, just time. Chosen, not expected. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like family again on my own terms. Snow dusted the lawn like powdered sugar. The kids were already tearing into presents, paper flying, ribbons unraveling, the living room filling with laughter and rapping and, "Grandpa, look at this." Mia handed Ben a card she'd made herself. Ben gave me a keychain that said, "1. Gramps." I laughed so hard I nearly cried. Maybe I did cry. Then the doorbell rang. Rebecca stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. No makeup. Hair pulled back. She looked more like the girl I raised than the woman who'd locked me out. "Figured you could use a refill," she said. I took the cup. "Thanks." She stepped inside, just for a moment, watched the kids laugh, smiled, not the forced kind, the real kind, quiet, tired, grateful. We didn't say anything else. We didn't have to. Sometimes a beginning doesn't look like a door swinging open. Sometimes it looks like coffee in the doorway on a cold morning. Sometimes it looks like being let back in. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.